Oh, here we are. Mirador Television on the morning of the 29th of October, no, September, September 2022. And I'm Keith Hayes. We're broadcasting from the White Hart Hotel. Let's get my hat in there. Very important. But even more important to get the ceiling, because that's centuries old. We're broadcasting from the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, East Sussex. But we are local, not parochial. And I think that you'll find wherever you're watching, Patagonia, Alaska, St. Petersburg, the tip of, let's say, Cape Town, South Africa. It doesn't matter where you're watching. I think you'll find something for you somewhere in the next couple of hours or so. It's the weather today, only about 11 or 12% chance of rain. It's fairly dry. It's going to be chilly, though. It's still only hovering around 15 or 16 degrees. And with scattered cloud, which means scattered sunshine. And right now, looking across at the courthouse, right across from our studio in the White Hart Hotel, which happens to be the bar, wouldn't you know? And the sun is gleaming and reflecting off the courthouse, making it look quite spectacular, but also signaling that we're going to have a rather nice day. So let's kick off with the news headlines this morning. I think we shall, because once again, gloom and doom and crisis. And the newspaper headlines: the crisis forces a bank bailout and cuts to follow. The Mirror. That's the first one, because wouldn't you know, Blunder Trust. It's got a play on words. Blunder Trust. The clueless PM and Chancellor's tax cuts forced bank bosses into a $65 billion bailout. Well, what that's about is the government's mini budget continues to dominate the papers. The Mirror leads with the £65 billion programme of bond buying launched by the Bank of England yesterday, saying the intervention stopped the country's pension funds going bust, and that the whole episode has left Britain on the brink. Well, that's Labour's viewpoint. The Financial Times: Bank of England unleashes £65 billion worth a bid to avert crisis in the debt markets. The Bank of the financial companies actually took action yesterday, and that is in the Financial Times. Also a sub-headline is that lenders buoyed by action after nearly 1,000 mortgage products are withdrawn. So what you could buy the day before yesterday, you couldn't buy yesterday. That's when it comes to buying a new house. The FT says the programme, which involves the injection of billions of pounds of newly minted money into the economy, was intended to prevent a vicious cycle in which pension funds have to sell bonds held as assets to pay their creditors, pushing the price further down and triggering more sell-offs. It quotes one senior banker saying, "I was worried at the beginning of the end. It was the beginning of the end. It was not quite. It's quite a Lehman moment, but it got close." I think by that they mean that the whole economy would implode. The Sun: squeaky fund time. It says the day £1,000 billion was nearly wiped off our pensions. And then its headline is pension funds crisis forces $65 billion bailout by the bank. The Telegraph says the crisis has sparked public and private alarm among Tory backbenchers, but the Downing Street has dismissed any suggestion the Chancellor will have to resign. It also quotes Gerard Lyons, an economist and informal advisor to the Prime Minister, saying he warned both her and the Chancellor about the need to make sure the markets fully understood what they were doing and that they mustn't spook the markets. Well, that's implying that they didn't actually inform the markets terribly well, and that they did spook the markets. Indeed, they did. And the markets were really spooked yesterday. The pound plummeting, markets going down, banks having to bail out pension funds through buying gilts. That's the debt market, by the way, gilts. It's government debt. Normally, it's called gilts, and the term gilt-edged comes from the fact that they are solid. You get paid back. But even they came under some question yesterday with the state of the government's finances. The Guardian, banks £65 billion scramble to avert financial crisis. The Prime Minister is facing pressure from her MPs to sack the Chancellor and reverse the abolition of the 45p tax rate because it has gone down badly with voters. The paper also quotes Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer accusing the government of losing control of the economy and calling for Parliament to be recalled ahead of the Conservative Party conference this coming weekend. The Daily Express, normally a supporter of the government, banks £65 billion to protect pensions in a day of turmoil. Well, it doesn't pull its punches today. It says ministers have insisted the tax cuts laid out in the mini-budget are the right plan for economic growth and that there will be no U-turn. Right. The I. Emergency help from banks saves pensions, with public sector cuts to follow. The government departments have been ordered to draw up efficiency plans to help reduce the deficit. The I reports that the public sector cuts are now on the way. They don't detail what public sector cuts we can expect. I better just wash out my mouth. Wash your mouth out, Keith, for some of the things that you say and are likely to say. Wowee. Yes. Let's pour ourselves another little coffee just to keep us on the straight and narrow so that our tongue doesn't get mixed up with our teeth. Right, the Daily Star. Kwasi meets Britain's best banking brains. So does anyone have a clue what I'm doing? It says a picture of Mr. Kwarteng at a meeting with senior bankers, but with an added red nose. A speech bubble reads, so does anyone have a clue what I'm doing? Oh, dear. We are in trouble, aren't we? Metro, a Rish best served cold. Let Liz own the moment. Sunak is going to the former her rival for the leadership says he's going to miss the Tory party's conference. Rishi Sunak will not be there because what he says is he wants to give the new Prime Minister all the space she needs to handle what's going to be a very difficult conference for her. The former Chancellor had warned of economic chaos if Truss was made Premier, and this comes as the Bank of England is forced to step in to prevent a run on UK's pension funds. The former Chancellor and runner-up to the Tory leadership, Rishi Sunak, will not attend the Conservative Party conference. Mr. Sunak said repeatedly during the televised debates with Ms. Truss that her economic plans were irresponsible and risked defeat at the next election. The paper quotes a source saying Mr. Sunak wants to give Tories Truss all the space she needs to own the moment. It is, the paper says, a Rish better served cold. A Rish better served cold. The Daily Mail. Prison X-ray finds phone hidden in Lawrence killer's body. The Mail, normally who leads with its head, has decided to lower its gear and is not front paging the current financial crisis. Instead, it's gone for a smartphone allegedly used by David Norris, one of the killers of Stephen Lawrence, and using it to send texts and selfies, was found inside his body after an X-ray was taken. The paper says specialist equipment was used to scan Mr. Norris after it tipped off the Ministry of Justice that a large rectangular object was located in an intimate place. Right, okay. Now, let me have my say on this whole thing. You know whose fault it is, this economic crisis? All the problems that we've got, well, it's our bloody fault. It's your bloody fault. Because we got fat and sassy. And we decided that we were going to have all-inclusive. We followed all sorts of newfangled ideas about how we should elect MPs. And what I've been saying for some time is we got 650 people in Parliament who shouldn't be there. They are not the cleverest of people. That they are there for a whole reason of different, why are there different reasons? So, when we had this crisis with the Prime Minister, who triggered it? The backbenchers. The people whom we should not have sent to Parliament. And then who triggered this latest crisis? The backbenchers. The people who we shouldn't have sent to Parliament. So, essentially, all these crises that we've been facing is our fault because we've become fat and sassy. Nothing can go wrong. And we could have a bunch of second-raters in charge. Well, we can't. And to have gone along with the way that the political parties have selected their candidates and forced them on many local, both Conservative and Labour parties, because they fitted the mould, they fitted the profile, was outrageous. But we went along with it. Nobody murmured. In fact, a hell of a lot of us didn't even bother to vote at the last general election. So we have got what we deserve. And we've got the result that we deserve. So I think that we stop crying in our milk. We stop yelling foul. But we also stop yelling diversity and looking after minorities. And for that matter, yes, going as green as we are. Without actually realizing that there are consequences to these things. Of course, green is important. And if you send enough people to Parliament on the basis that they follow green policies and don't know much about anything else, every time something not green comes up, you get fumbling in the dark. Absolute fumbling in the dark. They're not capable of handling these things. And we really have got to start to think very carefully about the way that we select MPs, the way that democracy is applied here. It ain't democratic, that's for sure. It is not democratic. It's just silly nonsense, which the political parties have gone along with, not actually instituted for their own particular ends. If you think that anybody amongst this lot are there worrying about you, on the contrary, they're only worried about their own backsides. They're only worried about what they are doing. We have got to get the very best people. We've got to get the very, very best people in Parliament. And we need to have, if we're going to have think tanks, and if we're going to have people look at the system, that's what really they've got to look at. They've got to look at whether we've got a good system or not that fits the bill, that is suitable for a modern democracy. And we, the public, must push them to that. Every time something happens that threatens a party, will we win the next election? Well, that's what they're saying is, are you going to vote for us? And they have got to convince us to vote for them. Not go through all this nonsense about we must have a bit of this and we must have a bit of that. We need people of excellence. We need people who know what they're doing. We need people who can steer us through these very difficult times. And we haven't got them. And that's really what we've brought on ourselves. Voter awareness. We should be thinking very carefully about how we make sure that everybody understands the importance of their vote. And that goes for locally too. 30% of people vote locally. That's outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Because those people who don't vote are the first to complain when things go wrong. So let's get with it, chaps. Let us get with it. Oh, yes. Well, there we are. That's who we are. Let's keep in touch. Make sure that we at Mirador know what we're doing, because what we very much want is, hang on, we very much want to have you back with us. Actually, we'd like you to stay with us. And we really put it out a plea to you, don't we? Yes, we do. To say, hey, we're not so bad. We may sound as if we fumble around and we fumble through the day, but actually, our fumbling is pretty close to to what you anticipate from us. And let's do the little domestics first. Is looking at the back pages. Is that England blew the OT or one day or whatever it is. I just don't understand that side of cricket. It says criminal. Brainless batting as England blow another run chance, another run chase. One thing that is in the back pages, and that is that a number of clubs have approached the FA to say, look, can we reschedule any game that is going to seep over to where we need the floodlights? Because it is damn expensive, very expensive, to put on those floodlights right now. It's adding so much to our costs that it is likely that some of us may go belly up, particularly the smaller clubs. So far, as I'm aware, the FA has not answered. But it seems to me to be a very reasonable proposition. Is please save us the cost of putting on the floodlights, even for the later part of the afternoon. And in fact, of course, as I was in the days before we had floodlights. and everything had to be played in daylight. So it's quite possible, not unreasonable. Why not? Got a bit of a sore throat myself. Incidentally, Liza Page and Max Heard are desperately trying to get themselves fit again so that they can come on tomorrow morning. They should be here this morning. That's what normally happens on a Thursday, is the two of them get together and slam everything in sight. They left me to do the slamming today. But I'm in the mood for it, because a lot of this stuff is a system. And I don't care whether it's Labour, Conservative, Liberal, or also Rams. They all contribute to a system which is not fit for purpose. And who said that? Boris Johnson said that before the last election. He called for a root and branch review of the way our government system works. And of course, we immediately hit Brexit and the other things when he was elected Prime Minister. And he didn't have time to implement that. In fact, he had so many crises facing him when he first became Prime Minister. Is after all the row about champagne and Christmas cake, is now almost all, except those die-hard people who are anti-Boris, are beginning to accept he had a very tough job and he handled it reasonably well. Liz Truss et al. Have got a very good job. How are they going to handle it? Now, before we actually get too much gloom and doom, markets are very, very sensitive to all sorts of things. If somebody comes up with some solution, and indeed the bank ploughing money into the economy yesterday lifted the pound, gave it a recovery. He slipped back a bit later, but gave it a recovery. That's just how sensitive information and action can be. And one of the things that an economist advisor to the government said, he told them, make sure people understand what it is that you're doing. And then make sure that the markets are aware of what you're doing. Now, politicians more and more and more have started to creep into their shells because they're doing things that are greatly unpopular. So their answer is, what people don't know doesn't bother them. But, governments have got to start communicating with people. They've got to make us understand what it is they're doing and why they're doing it. And they are signally failing to do that. They've got enough PR people around them. Then again, that's a discredited what should we say, sector. Nowadays, it's all about publicity and pomp. And, hey, look how good we are. Look, Mom, no hands, Johnny said as he cycled down the road. Handlebars unattended by human flesh. Well, that's really what's happening with us. We're going down the road without hands on the handlebars. And we've got to find a way to make sure that those who are leading us are firmly gripping the handlebars and steering in a sensible direction. And not only that, but make sure that we understand that PR has just become publicity. And now the real test for the PR people and the publicity people involved with the government is, can they make us understand? They've left it too late, in my opinion. It's going to take a long time to reverse the public's view of what's happening. They should never have had to. because good PR is telling it straightforward from the hip and building the strengths of a group or a company to handle whatever it is that they face. That's what PR is all about. Do they do that? Not on your Nelly, they don't. No, indeed, they do not. Let's go to the park. Let's go to the park. Just for a breather. Well, you're with the mouth this morning, the mouth that roars. And my roar is, why did we allow such lightweights get into our governance system? Because getting rid of them is going to be awful. It really is. They are there and they will stick for as long as they can. Good pensions, good perks, a decent salary. Why would anybody want to vote to end that? Why would anybody want to leave such a wonderful job? And despite their protestations, is they don't work harder than the rest of us. No, they do not. Some work hard, but they do not work harder than the rest of us. So some of these perks that they have are unconscionable. They should not have them. I personally would welcome the government's move to subsidize my local pub on the basis that I work hard and it should be there for me to have a cheap pint. But that's exactly what MPs have got. And I would love to pop across the road to what we call our works canteen, the Rights of Man pub, and say, hey ho, this is who we are. We work very hard. Knock 25% off the bill. That's exactly what MPs get. It is not fair, it is not just, but it is also not reflective of the fact that we've got people of little worth rollicking around inside the House of Commons, having a bloody good time, and nobody checks on whether they're there or not, unless a 3-line whip is called, and that's when the government needs every vote that they can possibly have to vote in their favour. It's called a 3-line whip, and they have people in the House called whips. They don't actually carry a crop anymore, I don't think. But the idea is that everybody is whipped into line to make sure that the vote goes in the government's favour. So a 3-line whip is, you miss this if you dare. But other than that, they don't have a register to see how often they sit in the House of Commons. They don't have a register to see how often they vote. They don't have a register to see whether they're working in their constituencies. And it's not a bad deal, in my opinion. And particularly since all those things have nothing to do with how hard they work. Nothing. Anyway, there we are. It is now 9 o'clock. It is 9 o'clock on the 29th of October in the year 2022. A year that seems to stagger from crisis to crisis from the day we open our eyes on January the 1st. And it has been no let up at all. And yet most of our institutions have not managed to be flexible enough to ride with the tide. So, financial crisis, mortgage packages are pulled in by the mortgage lenders, people like the Halifax and so on. The approach to easing the burden for energy and for the cost of living and for the other things that we have found difficult has come under fire, under strain. But there is little to suggest that anybody is doing anything about it. Work hard, ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Well, let's let's take a breath, shall we? Yeah, why not? Oh, there we go. There we go. It's cutting off abruptly, and I don't know why, but we'll check that out. We like the government, we have been ill prepared this week because of illness and so on. We haven't been able to do our usual checks on what we're playing, so I've been left to punch a button, and sometimes that button has been missing, lacking, not missing, lacking. It's oh well. Let's not get too excited. Right now, this next hour, next half hour, I think what we're going to do is we are going to show you the first half, at least, of one of the episodes in our bloody series, the bloody past of a tiny town. This is proved to be a popular series, and we've had good comment from those of you who are interested in the history of this town, but also good comment from those people who aren't local, but who like to know about the history of England, because much of it took place here, right in this backyard, which I can see out of the window. And, well, you can see a little bit of it, can't you? Yeah, you can. Okay. Let's sit back and relax then for a few minutes and look at another episode of The Bloody Past of a Tiny Town. Here we go. I think kissing is a very pleasurable way to start a day, and a very pleasant way to start a program. So let's start this episode with a kiss. Ah, but this is Lewis, remember. Perhaps the most famous sculptor of the 19th century was French artist Rodin, and arguably the most famous statue he carved was called The Kiss. As you can see, the images are slightly erotic, but in this day and age, hardly shocking. That wasn't the case in Lewis, of course. Art-loving but slightly eccentric American Edward Perry Warren lived in Lewis on School Hill, and in 1904 commissioned Rodin to make a copy of The Kiss for him. Oh dear, we are having a problem, aren't we, today? The system seems to not be behaving itself. And I can only apologise, and let's just see if we can actually keep it going. In which case, you have to listen to me talking, which is every reason to find out whether, in fact, we should keep it going. Because listening to me is like watching paint dry. Let's see why this is playing up. We can only reload it and hope that it will go. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Well, we can actually let's try it again.
I think kissing is a very pleasurable way to start a day.
It is indeed.
A huge success, and thousands filed into Lewes Town Hall to see the forbidden fruit. What started with a kiss ended with a public embrace, and a chance for the two models to show their affection in public. The kiss, incidentally, is now well travelled. Often away from the Tate Gallery, where it sits in splendour, the kiss is now in New Zealand. History is often based on old records, confirming that either this happened or that happened at a given time or at a fixed place. But much of history is also gleaned from the recollections of people who were present, or the tales handed down from father to son, mother to daughter, and then graphically brought to life by modern tellers of tall tales. So it is with the killers of Thomas à Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury in 1170. Canterbury isn't that far from Lewes, so the story may well have some merit. The story goes that as the conspirators fled, they stopped at St. Thomas's to rest. On entering the church, they threw their cloaks on a table. The table was level and steady, but the cloaks kept slipping to the ground, no matter what the men did with them. In medieval times, cloaks falling to the ground like that were a sign of guilt. The people of Lewes saw what was happening and raised the alarm, forcing the villains to flee north. They were, of course, hunted down and condemned to spending a long period of service in the Holy Land. True or false? It depends on who you talk to, but I am an old romantic. I prefer to think that it's true. For example, some written records say that revolutionary Tom Paine never debated his rights of man while he lived in Lewes. Try telling that to local historians. So certainly the murderers of Thomas à Becket could easily have taken refuge in the church which now bears his name. The church's history, supported by archaeology, shows it was there, or at least parts of it, in pre-Norman times, so its existence is not in doubt. Lewes was a key crossroads route at the time, and there is plenty of evidence to suggest people escaped to France down the River Ouse. So, murder most foul. Killing an archbishop is a pretty naughty thing to do. Killing one that, albeit was having a spat with his boss, was still dear to the king, was a pretty silly thing to do. Did they pass through Lewes as they tried to escape? It depends on who you talk to, but I'm an old romantic. I prefer to think that it's true. The Lewes of today is considered to be a university town. Professors, administrators, lecturers, and even students live in the town, plying their trade at one of the many universities nearby. The University of Sussex, Brighton University, the Sussex Downs network of colleges are all within easy commuting distance, so Lewes is attractive. There are also top-graded schools in the area, such as Roedean, Brighton College, and Bede's. But Lewes has a long and deep history in the field of education. a lady called Agnes Morley, believed that young people should be given a formal education in establishments of learning. So, in 1514, she started one. It stood near to the River Winterbourne, here in Southover Park. In 1540, it became Lewes Old Grammar School. The school remained on the site until the 18th century, when it moved to its present premises on Lewes High Street, just outside the Old Town's West Gate. Lewes Old Grammar School, listed as one of the oldest, if not the oldest, school in the country. Where did it all start?
I think it's about 23. I think one or two venerable places like Winchester and Eton are a bit older than we are, but it started in 1512, so it is pretty ancient.
I mean, it seems there was a great flood of schools suddenly started in that period. Any reason?
There are a number of reasons. One is the fact that we think of the disappearance of the monasteries as specifically a Henrician thing, the dissolution, dramatic dissolution, including, of course, Lewes Priory. It was also felt to be a worthy thing to do. And of course, people at that stage, in this transition between medieval piety and the early modern period, thought that a charitable work such as providing education would be quite good for the welfare of their souls after they'd passed on. It did go through a rather thin patch at the end of the 19th century and for the first half of the 20th. Many similar schools closed. Rye, for example. And the reason, well, Lewes just really hung on by the skin of its teeth. The reason being the provision of free elementary education from 1870 onwards, and the fact that people didn't need to send their children to Lewes.
Any sort of concept of what the early school that was in Southover Park or the grounds of Southover Grange would have been like?
There are pictures of St James's Hospital engravings, which, like the buildings that housed the free school, as it was called then, to start with, was a kind of outbuilding of the priory. It was probably something of that sort, fairly humble building, because after all it was providing charitable work for poor families. It was a lovely location, but it was rather prone to flooding, for one thing. We've got some records about numbers of the scholars, who by that stage numbered 20. And there nearly always were 20, not usually poor, deserving families. But we don't really know how many more pupils there were paying fees. Just little snatches of evidence from the 19th century. It was probably pretty grim at Lewes Grammar School, as by that stage it was being known. We've got some photographs. The earliest photograph of the school is from the 1890s, and the boys, and actually, strangely enough, a few very young girls seem to have been educated here as well. They look rather forlorn and down and pasty-faced.
Describe how the school is today, because it is seen as a pillar of Lewes society, if you want to put it that way.
I think that we now have around 600 pupils on roll. It's no longer a small school, but I think that if it does have that reputation, and I accept it does because that's what I hear as well, it's because that in spite of that growth in numbers, we have kept a sense of humanity.
The school has researched its background for the College of Heralds. As a result, the coat of arms bear the priory's crosslets, indicating its roots were established in the priory. The school is among the oldest schools in Britain. Logs, as it's known, now maintains strong traditions and holds its religious ceremonies in nearby St Michael's Church. The church has been in existence much longer than the school. There is evidence that it was established in connection with a Saxon monastery that existed in nearby Morling. The origins of the building, though, are debated as much as any other medieval item. Some argue that it was the church of the castle. That would mean its roots go back to 1080 or so. But records don't support this. They note that the church was built in 1140. Whatever the date, it's one of the oldest Norman churches in the country and played a huge part in the development of the town. But unlike the priory, St Michael's fought off attempts to destroy it as Henry VIII swept through Britain, dissolving monasteries and churches likely to maintain links with Rome. Perhaps that's why it maintained a ritual close to that practiced by the Roman Catholic Church, generally called today High Church. That gave rise to conflict over the years with the authorities. The town had become supporters of what was generally called Puritanism. The cause was probably the revulsion felt at Queen Mary burning people at the stake for religious differences. And of course, Tom Paine was married in the church to Elizabeth Olive. Actually, Lewis might have operated a dating agency many years ago. Not only did Tom find his missus in Lewis, but so did John Harvard, founder of the famous American university. Harvard's family was devastated by the plague, reduced to 3 from an original 11. He was born in Southwark and went to Emmanuel College, Oxford, where he met the resident of Ringmer, a small village near to Lewis. He married the friend's sister, Anne Sadler, in 1636 at a nearby church. Then, like Tom Paine, left for America, where he founded one of the most famous universities in the world. Back to St Michael's, and on its walls is a small monument to Sir Nicholas Pelham. Nick's helmet hangs just above the monument and is now an artefact of considerable worth. More about Sir Nick and his famous family after I've trotted across the road for some refreshment. I cheated. I didn't go over the road at all for my break. I came instead here to Pelham House. Before I tell you about Nicholas Pelham, I'd like you to take a look at this handsome building. It's a hotel now, but for almost 150 years it was the family seat of the Pelham family. They lived here from 1659 to 1809. In its later years, the family turned out an admiral, a bishop, and several statesmen. They were MPs for the surrounding area for decades, and one owned the White Hart Hotel. I would imagine that they would be rather amused to find that the family seat was now a hostelry. The family name is attached to all sorts of institutions in Lewis, the Pelham Arms pub, for example, as well as this hotel. So the Pelham name was written large in the history of Lewis. But Sir Nick was a warrior. The French were a constant threat to Britain and frequently attacked communities along the south coast. In 1559, they laid waste to Brighthelmstone, in other words, Brighton. They then made for Seaford, which in those days was the major port at the mouth of the Ouse. Sir Nicholas took his men and faced the hated French at Seaford. He fought them off and saved the town from being plundered. Hero though he was a true native of Lewis. He was rebellious, and he often squabbled with authority. During his life, he became involved in an anti-government conspiracy and spent time in the Tower of London. He told the government to get lost on one occasion when they asked him to provide men for the army, and generally squabbled with authority. But his children's children were given the title of Earl of Chichester, and the family flourished. Tom Paine was married in St Michael's Church. In Britain, there are not many that know the name, but Paine signed the Declaration of Independence. His name is revered next to Washington and Lincoln in the United States. But he was a restless spirit, and after starting the American Revolution, he came back to France and joined the French Revolutionary Council to run the revolution there. He fell afoul of Robespierre and was thrown into prison in 1793. His American contacts got him released, but Tom couldn't let well enough alone. In 1795, he returned to England, but his views got him into trouble again, and he was charged with seditious libel. His defence is considered by many to be the first argument to be used for freedom of the press. But it didn't matter. Persuaded he couldn't win, he went back to America. But his later writings had offended many Americans, and he died in 1809 friendless. Supporters brought his skeleton back to Britain, but first of all the skull was lost, and then the entire skeleton. Tom Paine's bones have never been found, but there are amateur historical sleuths in Lewes who continue to search for them. So although he lost his head in more ways than one, it's just possible that Tom Paine will end up back in Lewes with a headstone proclaiming his achievements. I talked earlier about Lewes Old Grammar School. This is the park where it was first established. This park has more history to reveal. It was the garden of the Grand Tudor Mansion, Southover Grange. The mansion, built from stones looted from the priory, was erected by William Newton. Newton was a Republican and fought with the Roundheads in the English Civil War. He was in good company, because most of Lewes was against the king. In fact, a royalist force was sent to sort out the local grandees. But they got waylaid about 10 miles away at Haywards Heath and never made it to the town. The house was built in 1572. Looking around the garden, you can see the wonderful arches and walls taken from the priory. The Newtons stayed in this house for 300 years, during which the Prince Regent came as a guest while visiting Lewes races. On at least one occasion, after becoming king, he brought his ladylove, some claim his secret wife, Maria Fitzherbert. The Newtons were obviously known for being discreet. The real legacy from the Newtons, though, is their garden. Now a showpiece of flora and fauna, it's a place of peace and calm. Tucked away from the bloody High Street and its violent history. This place holds one more bit of history. The Queen, as Princess Elizabeth, planted some trees here in 1951. As a Republican stronghold for so many years, the Newtons must have turned in their graves. So now the secret is out. Why did Lewes have so many pubs, 63, in the 18th and 19th centuries? Back then the population was less than half its current total, about 9,000. That means there was a pub for every 100 people and a brewery for every 1,000. Well, the main reason for so many pubs in the 18th century was that the water supply was awash with germs. It was dirty and not fit for drinking, so it was much safer to drink beer. Even children would have a pint, although the beer was weaker than modern-day ales.
Well, we had a splendid brewer brewing here in the 1870s called Henry Titlow Barrett, and he was faced with a dilemma because in 1875 there was an outbreak of typhoid caused by pollution of the Lewes water supply at the Kingston Reservoir, and 30 people died. And he described skimming a green slime off the water before he brewed, but said that because they boiled and produced alcohol, all was joy and the product was perfectly sound. Well, rather him than me.
There was another reason as well. The weather was much colder in those 2 centuries. Houses were difficult to keep warm. The Romans had been the last to use central heating, and they ruled Britain too many centuries before to be asked how to do it. So going to taverns was not only a social habit, but a practical way to keep warm. The telly was often on the blink in those far-off days, giving rise to groups and societies who often met in the inns and taverns of the town. I can't help but pine after those days, though. Can you imagine? The mind boggles. 63 pubs and only 9,000 people. It made it so much easier to get to the bar. Excuse me, I think a little investigation is called for.
Well, you'll be pleased to know that for those who like a little tipple early in the day, that the bar of the White Hart is being well stocked here this morning. The staff are in here making sure there is a wide variety of drink, and it opens at 11 o'clock. We think so. I'll tell you what, I will check it out in a little while and I'll let you know. So popping into pubs is a habit of mine, particularly when I'm on telly. So do join me later on. But for the moment, I hope that you enjoyed the little bit of history of this town and that what it's all about, because English history is steeped here. You cannot walk down the street without treading on something that screams of not only Lewis history but English history as well. So that's the way it tends to go. And we'll be back with you in a little while, I think. Shall we? Why not? I just double check, if you don't mind, to see what we're going to put up. But certainly, we want you back with us. We're here until 11. See you in a minute. That certainly wasn't what we anticipated. The gremlins are working overtime this morning, I'm sorry to say. We have no idea why, but there they are. We'll have another go to play that, shall we? Just to see what it is that you missed. Dear. Hey, let's see what's that. Let's see what was supposed to come up. Just a news snap. The hurricane, which is battering right now the east coast of the United States, is heading our way. And although it's not the worst that we've anticipated, it is expected to bring winds of about 60 miles an hour. Over what period of time? Well, certainly within the next 24 hours or so, I guess. Very quickly, let me run through the news headlines because they're all about the bank bailout this morning in the main. The Daily Mirror, blunder trusts, clueless PM and Chancellor's tax cuts force bank bosses into a £65 billion bailout. The Financial Times, the Bank of England unleashes £65 billion bid to avert crisis in debt markets. The Sun, which has tended to stay out of politics and anything close to the government. Don't know why, but it has bailed back in rather than bailed out with a squeaky fun time. And it says it describes Wednesday as the day 1,000 billion was nearly wiped off our pension pots. The Daily Telegraph leads with that story. Pension funds crisis forces £65 billion bailout by the bank. And the Guardian, banks £65 billion scramble to avert financial crisis. The Daily Express, normally a supporter of the government, is banks £65 billion to protect pensions in a day of turmoil. Market turmoil, it means, of course. The Eye, emergency help from the bank saves pensions with public sector cuts to follow. And the Star, Kwasi meets Britain's best banking brains. So does anyone have a clue what I'm doing? It says, with him sitting surrounded by these banking brains and trying to explain what it is that the government policy is. Underneath, his pound plummets as markets panic. The Bank of England forced to step in, and the Prime Minister has gone missing in action. The Metro, let Liz own the moment, is Sunak, Rishi Sunak, who is her rival for leadership of the Conservative Party, has said that he's going to give the weekend's Conservative Party conference a miss so that she can have the floor without being interrupted by negative thoughts, as it were, to explain what she's up to and to justify her actions and decisions. The Mail, it also, instead of being the hard-headed paper that it normally is on these occasions, says a prison X-ray finds the phone hidden in Lawrence killer's body. And the story is that David Norris, who was convicted of murdering Stephen Lawrence in a racial attack many years ago, and he's been using a mobile phone smuggled in to his cell, and has been making sending selfies and also a few naughties to various people on it. And now they say that a large rectangle object was located in an intimate place. Oh, dearie me. Fancy that indeed. Right, okay, so it's now 9:35. The weather, and just there was a warning flashed that we can expect the part of the storm that is hitting the east coast of the United States to flow across the Atlantic and to Well, hopefully we're back again. Why this keeps crashing this morning, I have no idea. It's not usual. It does happen from time to time, but the whole system, I think, sometimes gets overloaded when people are using it. Lots of people are using it, and it instead of thinking of 1,000 reasons why they want a password, why don't some of the brains decide how they can hope this is bring on something to combat this particular problem. Let's now take a look at something else. Well, let's welcome you back first. Right, now we'll try again to see if we can share some of our programs with you, and let's see what one way or another. It is not looking very hopeful, but there we go. Yes, we are in almost the right place, and what I thought that we might do is to well, hopefully, I am back, and we are still alive. What's happened to the system? I have no idea this morning. It's gone again. Well, we'll try again. We'll try again, and hopefully we will get a little stay of execution. It is 9:43, by the way, and we are expecting outside the temperature to hit about 16 or 17 this morning, a little on the chilly side, but possibly sunny spells. And actually, yesterday, even though it was a little chilly, it was very pleasant in the sun. So perhaps we'll be lucky enough today. The one other headline that was heavily posted this morning is that mental health has been found to be wanting a great deal, and it's very very unfortunate that we've been warning about that for a couple of years actually on this program. And of course, nothing was done, and now suddenly everybody wants to get cracking. I'm not sure just how much we might. Thousands complain to Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs about tax repayments, and the body has been found. A new image of a mystery woman who drowned 45 years ago. So there is other stuff around. This trust we had to take decisive action. A government not responsible for market volatility, says the minister. And key moments from Sir Keir's Labour conference speech in which he said they got it all wrong and we could get it all right. So there we are. But that was a moment that the public can visit the Queen's final resting place in Windsor. I'm really sorry if you're getting either a bad picture or no picture at all. I don't absolutely know what's going on, and we'll eventually have to sort it out. But for the moment, we'll see if we can get on with what we were planning to do. And one was just a little something about when I learned to fly, and it was an interesting time for me. Here we go. Let's give it a try. Well, it doesn't want to know. It does not want to know this morning. Oh dear, oh dear, dear. The system is all up the chute. So let's go to something which we know it does play, and see whether we can get that up. It's, here's one that might work. Let's hope so. Well, I'm here. I wonder whether we can do anything with the rest of our system. It seems not to want to work terribly well this morning. Don't ask me why, because that side of things is I'm totally incapable of answering the question. All I know is it broke down. Have I got it back again? Who knows? Who knows? We can only but try, can't we? And try we will. Try we will. Here we go. Cross your fingers. I'm a very accomplished flyer now, but way back in the 60s, when commercial jets still were being tested on commercial flights, then getting on board an aircraft was something of a trauma. We sat there hoping like hell that the pilot knew what he was doing and that he would get us down at the other end. And of course the pilots didn't know what they were doing, and they did get us down at the other end. But then again, air crashes became front page news, and it seemed always there was a crash just before I was supposed to fly. And so I wasn't the best flyer. Then one morning, somebody at the station, radio station I was working at, said, "Oh, someone's got to go up in a light aircraft and do traffic reports." Ha ha ha, I said, "They're not getting me into that." Guess who they came knocking on the door to? Hayes, you go out, you do the traffic reports. Well, I had no choice. I couldn't say no, I had to do it. So indeed I did. And away I went each morning, getting up at about 4:30, driving out to the airport and getting there about 5 o'clock, marching over to the far side of the airfield and getting into a Cessna 172, taking off, soaring above the city and passing on information about what was happening in the traffic. Wow. It took me 2 or 3 days to get used to the fact that this is what I was going to do twice a day. But then eventually I began to calm down and began to quite enjoy it. I enjoyed it so much, in fact, that I fell asleep one morning. I dozed, and the pilot said, "I think your station is calling you." And I heard the magic words, and now we're going up above the city, above the traffic, to see what was happening on the roads. So I opened my eyes, looked down, and immediately began to give a report. And the report was that there was a big jam of buses near the Oak Street Bridge, which went over the Fraser River. Wow! what a report. And then as we turned the aircraft and flew away, I realized that this was the bus terminal. I had just said that there were traffic jams of buses, and I'd been looking down at where the buses congregated before they set out on their morning routes. It's nothing like a great report. The pilot turned to me and he said, "You know, you've got this job licked. It's a bit boring, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, yeah, it is really. No, I mean, not much to say other than what's going on in the traffic. I try to brighten it up a little bit with a little quip here and there, but..." Right, tomorrow morning he said, "You get in the left-hand seat and I'll teach you to fly." And he did. And I was fortunate to have almost a year and a half of a flying experience. I logged 400 hours on the Cessna. I logged a couple of hours on a twin-engine aircraft and a couple of hours on other aircraft. I was the luckiest man in the world. And he put me into some pretty awful conditions. And we would fly up. I would give a report, and then we would do some what I know touch and goes. In other words, you land, you circle, you land, you circle, just to get some practice in. And we did, and one morning a gust of wind took it and I thought that the wing was going to be ripped off. Well, he grabbed the stick and managed to get us out of trouble, but it just shows the sort of thing that if you're going to be a professional pilot, that you have to put up with. So confident did we become on flying around together that he would set little tests, and he would say, there are clouds on the North Shore over the mountains. Why don't we go over and see if we can break the wings of this aircraft? Yes, let's do that. And we would deliberately fly into this mucky weather and get churned around and watch the wings, knowing full well that they wouldn't fall off. But daring. And it did turn out to be a lot of fun. I have to say, it turned out to be a lot of fun. A couple of other incidents. I used to take VIPs up in the afternoon and say, okay, here are some pollution issues and so on and so forth. And one afternoon we got my good friend, but also a colleague, Mrs. Grace McCarthy, who was the Deputy Prime Minister at the time. And we got out onto the runway and away we went. And a jet had taken off just before us, and it was a fairly still evening. So you can't see them, but the whirls of air, of course, by the jet's wings are still there. And sure enough, we got 3 or 4 feet from the ground, and away it went. We damn near lost the cabinet minister. But the Deputy Prime Minister. Once again, he came to the rescue, flipped it over, and we managed to save the day. The other item that I think was worth reporting is that we flew backwards. Have you ever flown backwards, he said. And this young chap was about 21 or 22. He was a nice young fellow. We bought him a helmet and nicknamed him the Red Baron. And he was to die in tragic circumstances in a plane crash later on. But he was a nice young man and very helpful and lots of fun. And so we went, and he said, we need a marker. And the plane travels forward at about 100 miles or so an hour. Actually, it's a little over 72 miles for the takeoff speed. And he said that the wind this morning is particularly strong. So he put the nose of the aircraft into the strong wind, and we watched the bridge below. And although we were keeping airspeed, the plane started to travel backwards. So here we were in reverse, in a plane, in the sky, watching the bridge recede while the plane powered forward at the correct speed and the wind pushed us back. And that's the sort of nonsense that we would get up to. And there are lots of other stories I could tell you about my flying experience. But perhaps this last one will bring something of a smile to your lips. I was trying very hard to impress who later became my wife, my girlfriend at the time, Valerie, and I said, would you like to come flying, dear, and come out with me this afternoon, and we can go and we'll go and do some traffic reports, but we'll also take a look at the Vancouver from the air. How lovely. Yes, she said, oh, that'd be super. Anyway, we got settled into the plane, I taxied out, checked with the tower, yes, we're all okay, we were about to take off, there's nothing in our way, rolled it out onto the runway and roared down the runway ready to take off, and the tower came on and said, MLA, which is the call letters of the aircraft, you're going down the runway the wrong way. Oh my goodness me. We had to screech to a halt and take off the right way. She still married me. Well, that's my flying experience. I suppose I should fly off now. Till the next story, the next tall tale. Tiddlywip.
Well, the system seems to be behaving itself temporarily anyway. And we just will, I think, go back and point out that the headlines this morning are either a couple of headlines, muted praise for Liz Truss, but mostly voices of alarm at what's happening to the British economy because of her policy
new policy of tax cuts. And it is the whole of the market has been totally and utterly upset. The volatility has pushed the pound down. And once that starts to happen, of course, you then get turmoil in the domestic field of mortgages costing more, and generally speaking, is a rise in the cost of everything. The only thing that isn't reported at the moment is that there is volatility in other currency markets as well, and but not in the American market. So our value against the dollar is diminishing. However, we seem to be holding up against other currencies. So depending on whether you're into dollars or whether you're into euros or whatever, you'll have a different view on what's happening to your savings and your currencies and so on and so forth. Let's take a little break again in our favourite, shall we? The favourite where we go to whenever we're in trouble, or whenever we want a little rest. We actually just did in our documentary series a little bit about Priory Park, but it is a beautiful, beautiful park. It's our version of the Potter's Wheel. We go there for a minute every now and again when we need to bridge two programs or we need to take a little breath. And I think that after just seeing us disappear 20 times, I'm going to take a little breath. Let's go. Well, we'll somehow we'll hope that I come back onto the screen. Oh, there I am. Yes, indeed. Now, what I would like to do is to introduce you or reintroduce you to the way that we did travelogues in the past, and because we are at the moment at loggerheads, to put it mildly, with the Russians. I thought that it might be nice if we took a little brief view at Russia. And the way we did it was to suss out any model railways that are built within or about the country under review, look at the train system that they've got, mix it together with some of their video from the tourist boards and so on, and try to give you a little feel for what the country is all about. And I discovered one when I was researching our stuff on Russia. So let's give it a try. And if it collapses this time, we know it's not the Russians interfering. So here we go. Well, now I have to say that that's a very interesting combination of model railways and real railways and some scenery that can be seen from their railways. I must say that I personally am very keen on Russia. I like the country, I like its food, I like its attitude. And strangely enough, I suppose because we're at war with them, is that the tendency is to think that their people are rather nasty. Well, they're not. They are rather a nice people in the main. At least the educated ones are. It is a vast country, and it has got much of its landscape, much of its territory that are small villages, farming communities, and they still use the term there, peasant communities. As a consequence, many of them are not worldly wise. But generally speaking, Russians are very knowledgeable, interesting, and generous. And I'm sorry that we are at loggerheads with them at the moment. I spent some time in Russia in the first part of this century, and I enjoyed myself immensely. And I still have friends there who I stay in touch with, although because of the conflict in Ukraine, it has been a bit more difficult. But nonetheless, I don't think that they have been totally cut off and kept from contacting the outside world, as I've certainly had some interesting conversations. But that was just a little snapshot of how they go about things, making models for one thing, and the train system, their train system for another, but also some of the interesting landscapes that you can see, including Red Square, which is in itself an interesting place to go to. They have, I understand now, reintroduced the changing of the guard at Lenin's tomb. And that was particularly spectacular at midnight because the guards are well drilled and well timed so that they leave the building, leave the Kremlin out of one of the far towers and march in goose step fashion along to the monument, to Lenin's tomb, and there perform a changing of the guard, which is to within seconds of the sound of the clock, the Kremlin clock, striking midnight. I do it other times of the day, but it's much easier when it's just one stroke or two strokes. But they do it to the 12 strokes, and impressive it is in the extreme. And if you're there when it's a little chilly, and they've got their furry hats on and their big thick boots, it is even more of a spectacle. So if you are going to Russia and you are going to Moscow, make sure that you visit Red Square. The other thing is that on Red Square is the big department store called GUM, G-U-M, GUM. And going in there, it is a rabbit warren of small shops, stores, counter type ice cream things and so on, but also tucked away small restaurants with really first class food, really wonderful food. So that's another thing for Red Square. And then, of course, you face St. Basil's Cathedral, which is curlicues and turrets and so on. So the whole square gives you something for a couple of hours to go and mull around and investigate and take a look at. In fact, I found a little restaurant just off Red Square, and I must say that it became one of my favorites because it's very, very pleasant, and the food was extremely good. So a visit to Russia at such time as we're able to visit again, you will find nice people, nice food, very interesting history, buildings, architecture, and so on. And one of the things that amused me the very first time that I went to Russia, which was when it was still under the old communist regime, it was still the Soviet Union. And if you stood in line, you weren't allowed to walk across the square in those days. You are now. In those days, you had to shuffle around the side. And there are a number of, to put it bluntly, hefty women who had official uniforms on and a whistle. And if you, for as much as stepped off the pavement onto the main square, a whistle would go, and these women would rush towards you, brandishing a kosh. It's a better description of and telling you to get off the square and back onto the pavement. But also, in those days, in those early days, in the 1970s, when I first went to Russia, it was quite common to smoke in public, and people would smoke and then wouldn't know what to do with their cigarettes, so they would tend to throw them to the floor, and do that at peril, because then the whole host of these ladies would depend with whistles blowing and so on, so pointing and shouting and screaming, and you really had to be very, very careful when you stepped off the pavement or threw down a cigarette, because it looked as if you were going to be battered to death. Oh dear me. Right, let's just take a look now at the. It's 10:19 for those people who are interested in the time, and it's the 29th. And actually, I was debating with my friend at the bus stop this morning what date it was. Both of us had got it wrong. We both thought it was the 30th. So it is important that I let you know that it's still only the 29th. The 29th of September in 2022. And that the time is 10:20 exactly. That outside it's likely not to hit much more than 15 degrees, but that we are going to have extended periods of sun. And in fact, the sun has been out for most of the morning and is reflecting off the courthouse that we can see through the window there. So that is the general state of affairs. We are still at war in Russia. We are still debating the issues with the economy. I said that the Daily Mail seemed to have backed off from being hard-headed, but some of its economists, who are very, very good, say that the IMF is actually stepping outside its remit. And really, it was the IMF that unsettled markets, not the actual UK's actions. Now, I think it's a bit of both. But we do tend now to have people who read gloom and doom into absolutely everything and anything. And one of the key things about markets, financial markets, is that you talk them up. You try to give them confidence by pointing out the good things. And everybody on this particular occasion has decided to point out the bad things. Well, what do we expect? The markets do get spooked. And as a consequence, people sell off, and all sorts of financial problems arise. There's a rise in interest rates and so on, all things which are not good for business. And then we get our financial disasters, and we get ourselves into trouble. So there are a couple of good articles in this morning, partly in defence of what the government is doing, but partly to try to explain why, in their experts' opinion, this situation has been exacerbated. And that was my own view, is that the alarmists do get things going to the point where we start to hear all sorts of unsolicited views on what should be done. Also solicited views by the media from people who don't know any better. I mean, let's face it, our Prime Minister and 90% of his shadow cabinet, and most of the MPs from the Labour Party and the rest of the parliamentary party know sweet bugger all about finance. But they do insist upon making statements and for getting in the wallops from their point of view. Am I saying the markets aren't as bad shape as they appear to be? No, I'm not really saying that. But what I am saying is that the situation is volatile. They could move either way because of a lot of the mouthing, blah, 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 that is going on in the world and in the market sphere at the moment. So just something to remember on that. Right, okay. Now, there are a couple of inside stories. It's very interesting because we have been pumping, if you like, our own view here on Mirador that free speech is under threat. And we have deliberately taken on some controversial figures who should be with you this morning, but are both poorly, unfortunately. But we've given everybody who comes on free sway. Doesn't mean to say that we don't actually express our own opinions. We do. And those people who say, well, you're a news organization, you should be impartial, is we're not a news organization. What we do is we let you know what the news is. And then we have our comments and we have our experts commenting. And generally speaking, I think that we present a fairly balanced view of what's going on in the world. But the free speech issue has become key because we are seeing an erosion of free speech. And a couple of the people that we've had on said, can we really say whatever we want? Won't somebody come in and arrest us? And we said, well, they can try. Because we are absolutely adamant that our main bulwark for this station is the defense of free speech. Now, what is in the inside of the Daily Mail this morning? That 1 in 3 students say free speech is under threat. And a third of students say free speech is threatened on campus. And many perceive a chilling effect that discourages open debate, a study has found. Oh, my goodness me. University has always traditionally been where you can express outrageous views, where you can give your own point of view, and where you can stand up and you can say what you like without fear of being interfered with. Well, the woke generation has decided that we can't. And that is an erosion. That is an attack on free speech. And students now say that 34% now feel that they are under threat from those fellow students who have decided they know best and that they will tell everybody what they should think and what they should do, and actually to take violent action to make sure that their viewpoints are pressed home. And that's not the right way to go. The only encouraging thing is that 34% of students now feel that this is the way, as opposed to 23% in 2019. So there is a feeling amongst the new student bodies that they are being hassled and harried into giving a particular viewpoint, when in fact what they want is free speech. A string of incidents have happened in which speakers have been banned from campuses and academics bullied out of their jobs. And this happened at Brighton, at the University of Sussex in Brighton. There was a lady professor who expressed certain views on the role of women and who was harassed by both student bodies and other academics. And that is the frightening thing, because academics have at their disposal young minds that are pliable and malleable. Oh yes, 18, 19, 20. But those are formative years. And that's when ideas beyond puberty are formed. And to tamper with the freedom of expression, the freedom of thought, the freedom of speech with these young, pliable, malleable youngsters is beyond forgiveness. It should not be happening. The last year is the lady that I was talking about is Kathleen Stock, was hounded out of her role at Sussex University by activists because she questioned transgender ideology. Well, I question transgender ideology, and mainly is because I don't believe that there's more than a small percentage of people that give a damn about transgender. I know I don't. I've nothing against transgenders, nothing against the idea, but I don't want it thrust down my throat every 5 minutes. And I don't want people belly aching because they are discriminated against. They should be able to fight their own battles and not go whinging about how they're being treated. We should have a calm and freedom to be able to think the way we want to think. And these, for that matter, I think the gay community is, I have nothing against gays. Wonderful friends who are gays. I work with gays. So they're gay. Get on with it, chaps. Perfectly okay by me. But then they are their own worst enemies because they go whinging that they are being mistreated and so on. Well, we're all mistreated one way or another. Tell you what, chaps, I'm mistreated because of age. I wouldn't have believed it 10 years ago as I started to enter to the elderly state, as it were, that I would be discriminated against. I always thought that right to the end of my days, that as long as I didn't have my abilities impaired because of sickness or dementia or whatever, that I would be able to carry on and do my work as I wanted. Well, the number of places that allow me to do that are a handful, just a handful. And most of our big institutions are not amongst them. Not amongst them at all. And when you think about it, society, every time that we say the pension age will go up by 2 points, 2 years, is, we can't do that because we won't get our pension in time. Well, most people, I think, don't give a damn about their pension being delayed by a couple of years. They want to feel that they can make a contribution to society. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that's the way I feel. I am far past 65. And I still think that I provide a useful contribution to our way of life, to our society. And I resent the fact that the wokes and the narrow minds and the liberals, to some extent, don't want those of us with experience to tamper with their view and their idea of what life should be all about. The tampering with the English language is one of the things that really gets me. You can't use this word, you can't use that word. Bollocks. That is totally wrong. English language is a vital and beautiful thing. And for people to tell me I cannot use a word to describe something which I've been using for 30 or 40 years is beyond belief. It is beyond belief that we would have such people in our society. And yet they pull strings. Their shouting and their bellowing persuades people to get silly about the use of such things in language. And the his and her thing is just that is absolutely stupid. Really quite stupid. People have thought themselves into untenable positions which they then defend to the death. Blue, blue, blue. A Cambridge Don in in Trafalgar Square, there has been a plinth without a statue for a good many years. People have had temporary access to it, depending upon something that's going on. But now it looks as if we got a permanent fixture there. And it is an anti-colonial African is put on the plinth. I have no objection whatsoever to that. This man was an interesting man. He's a Baptist preacher. He staged an unsuccessful uprising in what was Nyasaland, is now Malawi, in 1915. The bronze resin sculpture by Malawian-born Samson Kambalu restages a photo taken in 1914 of the two men in which Mr. Chilembwe wore a hat, despite a rule that Africans should not do so in front of white people. Well, no, that was silly discrimination. He's the first statue of an African in Trafalgar Square, and he comes amid debate over whether the fourth plinth should become the site of a permanent statue of the Queen. Well, I think that's an interesting use of it. The only thing is that I don't want to see people making it a martyr of all the evils of our country and other Western countries against Africans, against Indonesians, against Asians, against Indians, if I can put it that way. That's history. We are not going to change it, turning back the clock artificially. We can change our view that we should not let it happen again by actually highlighting what went on. But to say how dreadful we were and to condemn our forefathers is, do you want to go so far back to the Romans, who, when the legions marched through Britain, or for that matter, marched through anywhere in Europe, who were known to pick girls from the side of the road and rape them at will. All the things that the Romans provided for us, do we condemn them? Do we condemn the Italians? Do the Italians condemn themselves? I don't think so. I don't think so. What I would prefer to see is tolerance all the way around. And the woke generation most certainly are not tolerant, not in any sense at all. And thank God, if in fact 1 in 3 students are saying that free speech is under threat, then perhaps what's happening is there is a fight back. The people are getting fed up of being ordered to do what they do, to be ordered to think the way they think. Well, the other stories are lightweight stories, really, on the inside. There's a nice story on page 32 with Dirk, 70, and his mini-me family. He's 70 years old, but Dirk is a giant tortoise, and he shows no signs of slowing down. He's just fathered 8 children, giving his endangered species a huge conservation boost. Well done him. Dirk has had babies with 2 females so far this year, the first giant Galapagos tortoise to successfully breed in the United Kingdom. Crocodiles of the World in Oxfordshire, I presume that's the name of it, Crocodiles of the World. Now he's set his sights on a 3rd female. Good for him. And zoo boss Sean Foggett said he is a very important tortoise. What do you want to bet that somebody somewhere will say we're encouraging immorality amongst tortoises? Right, okie dokie. Where are we now? We are at 10:37. 10:37, and we've had some technical problems this morning. We seem to have got over them for the moment. I'm happy to say. But let's let's see what we might have to keep you amused for 5 minutes or so. I think that we do have we've looked at the trains, and we've looked at the planes, and we've looked at the bloody past of the tiny town. Let's just take a look. I think we can take a look at Kipling. No, cricket.
My name is Richardson, and I happen to have been born in Britain. All peoples have their peculiarities and their enthusiasms. We are no exception. One of our enthusiasms is a game whose cause is served by experts and by those who only stand and wait. And while they wait, certain preparations, solemnly proceeding during many hours, reach their climax. For this is Lord's, deeply rooted in tradition and in the ritual tradition brings, where until the proper time, no man may enter unless he have some special access.
Well, on this occasion I have some special access. My name's Arlott, John Arlott, and later on I'll be telling you something about the match. In the meantime, out comes the old country land measure. 22 yards, 4 rods, poles or perches, 1 chain, the length of a cricket pitch. They're measuring out the wicket, and that is something of a ritual, as a matter of fact. It takes many hours of skillful work over many months to prepare a first-class wicket, and that's just what this is, the special test wicket, a very revered patch of English turf plumb in line with the pavilion door. The test wicket of all test wickets, when at Lord's England plays Australia, and when that happens, everything has to be just so, to start with anyway. And while they've been working, the crowds have been gathering, soon to grow to something like 30,000 people, to say nothing of those who have to stay at home and listen on the radio to people like me.
30,000 people and many millions throughout the world did but time and geography allow. This game called cricket had its origin in quiet places and lives on in equally quiet places, deep in the hearts of those who love it. What is it about this unobtrusive game? What is its magic? For magic it must surely be that makes men sit and watch and dream of past occasions and of wistful yearnings never quite fulfilled. Magic it is that makes the hush when captains meet. The wicket is inspected and another test begins.
Don Bradman wins the toss for Australia, and Australia are going to bat. They're going to get first use of this good wicket. And here's the England side coming into the field. Yardley leading them, and here's Tom Dollery, Jim Laker, Dennis Compton and Douglas Wright of Kent at the end. And then, out of the pavilion gate, come Australia's opening pair, Barnes and Morris, Morris in the cap. And Alec Bedser of Surrey begins the bowling from the nursery end. Fast medium right arm comes in, bowls to Barnes outside the off stump, and it bounces off Evans' pads. Bedser again. Bowls again to Barnes and again beats him outside the off stump. And the first over's a quiet one, a maiden. and Alec Coxon of Yorkshire bowls the second over from the pavilion end. Elbows well out, comes in, bowls to Morris. Morris forces him away on the onside, and the Australian innings is underway. The first run's up on the board.
And so another historic test is underway. Watched by the press of half the world. Watched too by appraising eyes in the pavilion. Eyes that have seen many a cricketer come and go. For here in the long room at Lord's, criticism is restrained. Praise is brief, and only sunny days and history are long. Here are pictures that have captured in eternal attitudes the beginnings of the game, showing the essence of this thing called cricket, all thought and spirit concentrated on a square of green, a subtle battle between a slice of willow and a round of mud. Days of two stump wickets, when bats were curved and the scorer kept the tally with notches on a stick. Paintings of village greens in days when cockfighting was rife. Pictures of the high noon of Victorian peace, when cricket had become part of English education. And Lord's itself in 1837, then and today, the acknowledged home of cricket. Australia's innings has come to a close. The score stands high and is duly noted. There is time to breathe until England takes the field.
Now, cricket in the hands of the experts, more than a game. It's a craft at least, almost a science. Let's ask an expert, Bert Rhodes of Derbyshire, to bowl us a leg break on this demonstration wicket. Now, there's the spinning finger, the third one, see, cuddled close against the seam. It comes up. Now, this is the perfect leg break. Watch where it pitches. Just outside the line of the leg stump, and it turns enough to beat the off stump. And now, the orthodox, the natural break, spun off that index finger, the off break. And this pitches, watch it, outside the line of the off stump, and it beats the leg stump. Now, that's the right arm bowler's orthodox weapon. Let's see how the batsman copes with it. As the ball comes down to him, turning into him, well, all right, he just lets it hit the bat. And that's why short-leg fieldsmen were born. Well, perhaps attack's the best method of defense. Down comes that off break again, and the batsman hooks it hard and high over those short-leg fieldsmen, but not over deep square leg. There is a way of doing it, of course, over the ball as it moves into you, and push it away along the ground as Edrich does this ball from Lindwall, playing it to Barnes. When England are 27 for 1, which is nothing for Englishmen to be very happy about, and Ray Lindwall is bowling at full speed to Hutton. That ball's well up to him, and he pushes it away past mid-off for a comfortable 2. Bradman moves round those hungry Australian slip fieldsmen, and Lindwall, in one of the finest spells of fast bowling seen in England since Larwood, bowls again, this time to Edrich, and Edrich pushes him away out into the covers, quite safely.
While experts battle, experts forge the weapons that they use. Good white willow with a wholesome heart, long seasoned, like the men who shape it. Skilled hands practicing a long-established craft. For wasn't John Small, the cobbler, making cricket balls at Hambledon 200 years ago? Since then, the craft has grown. And yet, there still remains the steadiness of eye and hand that sews the seams. Seams that in the bowler's hands will give the hidden feel for breaks and twists. Seems to withstand the onslaught of the bat. For the heart of a bat is firm, and its blows have strength and punch.
Yes, it's got punch, all right. Power. And it doesn't get there by accident. Take the handle now, with its cane and rubber springing, to whip as it's got to when a Hutton or a Bradman drives a fast bowler far away. There's got to be good splicing for that kind of thing, too, but cricket and craftsmanship go hand in hand, and when handle meets blade in a cricket bat, you've got a real piece of craftsmanship. It's the same with the ball, sewn firm and tight, and when it's done, a durable, balanced projectile, carefully weighed and measured and graded, as precise in its making as the hands that will use it, as precise as a cricket bat. First-class weapons, one designed to break or swing and beat the bat, and the other to fathom the tricks of the bowler and send the ball far away. And it takes Doug Wright at number 11 with a wild swing over the bowler's head, sky high up there into the long field, to save England from the follow-on. And Ray Lindwall, with 4 wickets already in the match, bowls again from the pavilion end, and bowls Alec Bedser. And England are all out for 215, 135 behind Australia on the first innings. There'll be some long faces in the printing room at this news. There's quite an organisation down there. They keep abreast with the play, recording the fall of each wicket and the scores, so that late arrivals can pick up the score in detail straight away as they come in. With Australia 135 in front, they'll probably think that's a pretty sad threepennyworth. But now Australia have started their second innings. Bedser bowls to Barnes, his in-swinger, and Barnes puts it away, down to long leg. Round comes Hutton, fielding at long leg, and there's that quick low throw to Godfrey Evans. And now Wright bowls to Morris, and he's out.
When a wicket falls or a hit is made, those behind the scenes spring into action. What they record will go speeding over land and ocean. When a batsman strikes, the whole world outside will want to know the score. And when they know it, they'll cast an envious thought to those who sat at Lord's and watched.
And there goes Barnes, magnificently caught by Washbrook at long on for 141. And Australia are now 431 in front. And now here comes Lindsay Hassett, the vice-captain, to face up to Norman Yardley. I suppose waiting for the earlier batsman. He's had his pads on for best part of 4 hours. Well, he needn't keep them on any longer. Meanwhile, the Don bats on. Don Bradman, on his last Test tour and playing his last Test innings at Lord's.
Don Bradman, pride of Australia and the despair of England. But whichever side one favours, who can but acclaim a master? Bradman, whose name now joins the golden pageant.
And it is a golden pageant. Let's look at just a few of them. Silver Billy Beldam of Hambledon, who in the 1780s became the first great batsman. William Lillywhite, the nonpareil, the man who changed bowling from underarm to round arm. William Clark, the one-eyed Nottingham bricklayer, who with his All England 11 spread the gospel of cricket all through the country. The Lion of Kent, Alfred Minn, the great fast bowler of the 1840s and 50s. Spofforth, the demon bowler from Australia, who in the great Test of 1882 even took the wicket of the old man. W.G. Grace, the Gloucestershire country doctor who turned a rustic sport into the science of modern cricket. The first man to score a century before lunch in a Test, Victor Trumper. Ranji, and the bowler who suspended the laws of timing, Maurice Tate. Clary Grimmett, the most accurate of all leg break bowlers. A problem even for England's great opening pair, Jack Hobbs of Surrey and his imperturbable Yorkshire partner, Herbert Sutcliffe. Jack Hobbs, the modern master, who, in the 1930s, resigned his supremacy to a young man from Bowral, Donald George Bradman. A pageant of 170 years of cricketers on whom the sun always shines. In retrospect, anyway.
But cricket casts its own peculiar glow, and in the years to come, this day too of rain and cloud will be sunlit in the memory. Will rain stop play? Anxious eyes survey the wicket. Willing hands turn too. But fate is kind and the battle is renewed. All through a cloudy afternoon, they struggle on. The English batsman extra careful, heavily conscious of each wicket as it falls.
England want 596 to win, and Hutton's out for 13, and England 42 for 1 wicket. And now Toshak bowls to Edrich. Ian Johnson catches him at first slip. Edrich is out. England 52 for 2 wickets, and in trouble. That'll hurry him and depress him in the printing room. Well, with 2 wickets gone for 52, England are in a lot of trouble. Indeed, almost everything depends on the man who now comes out of the pavilion. Dennis Compton. And with Hutton gone, England's last real hope.
So they fight on, a battle of muscle, sinew, and eye. For this is cricket at its finest, calling forth a quality deep in men, the calmness of a Compton on a sticky wicket when the world is watching, steadiness of nerve and quick agility. To be a Hobbs, a Sutcliffe, a Bradman, or a Compton. The heroes change with the years, but the dream to be a cricketer lives on in every generation. And the heroes pass on their knowledge, for cricket is a part of the very substance of a country's education. But the game knows no class, and indeed no frontier. In the West Indies, Australia, New Zealand, India, under the shadow of Table Mountain, developing the same qualities in men, regardless of background, color, or creed.
England, 106 for 3, want an impossible 490 to win. Impossible? Well, Compton's still there. And here's Big Bill Johnson with that bucking, bridling run coming in to bowl to him. And Compton's out. England's last hope of the impossible. And now, Toshak bowls to Coxon. Toshak thinks he's out. Umpire thinks he's out. Coxon thinks it's a shame. Now it's all over, bar shouting.
The day wears on. Another game is lost and won. Well, perhaps not quite. Defeat has come to England, and to Australia, victory. Australia takes the Ashes. But victory is the least that men play cricket for. They play it for a host of reasons, ill-defined and hard to seek. On school ground, on city street, on village green, they play on. For the urge wells deep from quiet places, in men and in the land they spring from.
Just the one. I managed to get it back off her.
We better, yes. Thanks for the British Council for that film. A couple of points about cricket. We just decided to take a look back there. First of all, it was invented, is generally speaking, as accepted in Sussex. And the game goes back to 1611, and quite an interesting history it's got. One of the very first class cricket matches ever played was against the Duke of Richmond, and at the time he was Sir Walter Gage, and now the ancestor of Lord Gage of Firle. And it is said that it was probably played at the Dripping Pan in Lewes. So there's just a little bit of history for you. And the other thing is that John Arlott was the voice of cricket right throughout my days, youth and early days. If you said Arlott, you said it with hushed tones. And it just so happens that his son Tim is a friend of mine, and just a couple of years ago, was in the Rights of Man on Lewes High Street having lunch with myself and a couple of other friends from the Reuters Foundation, and a very jolly afternoon we had indeed, a very pleasant afternoon. So there you are, a little personal memory from me. But I'm sure that little film about cricket raised a lot of interest in people here. Okay, that's it. It's 10:58. We are going to abandon ship now. I'm sorry that we had all that problem this morning of the thing dropping out, but it seems to have resolved itself now, and it hasn't been too bad in the last hour. We will be back tomorrow. We'll be back with the Max and with Liza Page, who will join lock horns again over a number of things and give you a fairly brisk debate. They're both poorly today, but they both thought that they would be able to pull themselves together and be here for another round of their challenges tomorrow at 11 o'clock. And it's just for your reminder, it's the 29th day of September today, and it's 2022, the year, not a year easily forgotten. And the temperature outside is somewhere between half decent and chilly, is 16 to 17 degrees, scattered cloud, some nice sunshine, and that's what it's doing at the moment as of 10:59. And that's a day that you can go out and enjoy. So go and enjoy and join us again tomorrow. We look forward to having you with us. That's it for the moment. All I will say is toodle, toodle, pip.